Hey, welcome to another short journey on my mind.
You got it right.
Hey.
Kevin struggles with the
And
title
I
of
do.
this thing,
I
by the
want
way.
to call it Journey on My
Just
Mind Short.
behind the scenes struggles with this.
Yes, but I got it right today. And it's just me and Dave again today. And we went with Christmas colors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Christmas in July or
is.
May or June or whenever this is.
But we thought we'd bring some color to the world. And it is May 2nd today.
that we're recording.
But
this thing may drop.
Yes.
on-
But I am a little disturbed by the fact that it's going to be almost 90 degrees today.
Mm-hmm.
I just no.
Chief
It's too
meteorologist
early. Yeah,
Kevin
come on.
Dixon.
Come on. Can we do something?
Doing a weather
different?
forecast
Yeah.
here, by the
Can
way.
we figure it out? But anyway. So where do you want to go with this short today?
Well, in follow-up to the last short we did, one of the things we said in the middle of that is one of the messages that seems to come out sometimes is that that psychology / psychiatry / mental health is anti-Christian.
Or at odds with.
At odds with faith.
Yes.
And so I think we need to address that head on. Again, I think it's a shame that we do.
Yeah.
But we do because it is definitely a message that I will say a good number, I don't know what percentage-wise, in the church are still either convinced that psychology is antithetical or against the faith or certainly not in line with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And my education has some, I have some, I guess, biblical counseling courses and coursework that I've done at Westminster in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And with that, I took courses. I didn't get a degree. I had my degree from seminary. And I encountered some things when I first got into the ministry where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to help these people.
Yeah.
There's some sexual dysfunction in the church that I was in, meaning some incest things, some the community that I was in, it was just some really weird stuff. And I was like, okay, I need to get somebody to teach me a little bit. And so I've taken some of those courses. So part of what I want to just assure you is that we're not speaking at this just from a angle of we don't know and we haven't experienced some of the stuff. And your degrees are from secular colleges.
For sure.
Yeah. And so we find ourselves sitting at the same table, talking from different vantage points, but coming to the same conclusions.
Right. And I will say interesting thing about a lot of seminary classes or Bible college classes on counseling. This is an interesting thing that I've observed, and that is I've read a lot of the texts that early on were adopted.
Yeah.
And it's often just reverse engineered psychology that then is like we're going to put sort of a biblical framework.
We have to put Jesus in here somewhere.
So we take cognitive behavioral therapy and then we sort of put spiritual language and scripture around it.
Yeah.
But it actually starts back here, which again to me feels kind of dishonest in a sense.
Yeah.
Because they're saying, no, we're not into secular therapy psychology.
Right.
We're really biblical counseling. But what they're talking about is repurposed cognitive behavioral therapy.
Correct.
Often, not always.
Once I learned what cognitive behavioral therapy was, I was like, oh, I know this.
Like, that's that.
Yeah, I know this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it didn't start the other way. It started with cognitive behavioral therapy and people
For
going,
sure.
we need to Christianize this thing.
Yes, yes. And there's also a strain within Christianity that would say that everything is spiritualized.
Yeah.
And that you can find freedom from whatever it is that ails you, whatever your addiction is, whatever your psychological issue is, whatever that could be, whether it's OCD or whatever. If you go through these 12 steps or these 10 steps and out the other side of that, you will find freedom. Because really, the problem is that you believe a lie. And so that's part of the strain that, and the reality is that for somebody who has, is dealing with some discipleship, spiritual issues, sure, that's very helpful. and it can lead to places of healing where you actually forgive people and you go through, and that's really helpful.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of other things
Right.
that it's
And
not helpful.
And there are plenty of people that have struggles in their life that way of thinking might be extremely beneficial.
Right.
So there's no question about that.
Yeah. But where it collides is in that place where we say, okay, the spiritual practices that we're helping you with are not changing this. So there's something not touched by this in you.
Do you?
And I say, you need to go talk to a therapist. That's what I say.
Yeah.
I say, you need to go talk to somebody who knows more than I do.
Well, I'll be honest. Sometimes I'm in an appointment and I'm sitting there talking to a person and saying, this guy needs to go see a therapist. So I say the same thing.
And they're talking to you.
And they're talking to me.
Yeah.
Well,
you need to go talk to a pastor.
Right.
I'm going to refer you to
Kevin Dixon. So, yeah.
That's funny.
Well, where it starts to, let me ask you the question.
Yeah.
Then we'll get down the path.
Okay. Yeah.
You kind of posed this, but I know the answer. This is kind of rhetorical, but
okay.
Do you believe this idea that all struggles, addictions, the mental health struggles, like all depression, anxiety, can be cured or healed purely in kind of a pastoral counseling or spiritual discipleship framework?
I don't. But I think if God intervenes,
sure.
Sure. But if it's a matter of the practice of trying to get people to think a different way or believe a different way, or I'd say no.
Yeah.
You can do behavior modification with people, but it doesn't solve the psychological issue.
Yeah. I think often where the struggle is with the faith, is psychology at odds with the Christian faith. There are some really philosophical, deeper questions that I think sometimes are misrepresented or misunderstood. And one of them that I hear most frequently is that psychology centers humans. And because of that, it is in this sort of humanistic realm that is opposed to a God-centered worldview.
Sure.
And there are a lot of problems with that.
Yeah.
And the biggest of those, I mean, we could get into multiple, but the biggest of those is that we don't say that medicine centers humans in that, so now it's opposed to the faith,
right? Or
that accounting centers humans and it's opposed to the faith, or pick it, right? We don't.
We say it about science, though.
Yeah, right. Sometimes, yeah, and there are people like Francis Collins who are solidly evangelical who would say we're losing a whole generation because of our anti-science bias.
For sure. Yeah.
Similarly with this,
yeah.
In recent studies and surveys, younger generations, the Gen Z and millennials, what they say is, first of all, they're obviously checking out of the church.
Yeah. In droves.
In droves.
Yeah.
But the ones that want to stick say that the church's approach and acceptance of mental health issues is a
huge
factor in whether or not they want to go to that church.
Yeah.
So, and that isn't necessarily like we're therapizing or turning the church into this sort of therapeutic community purely, and that God's this therapeutic being that's all he is. But it is important. And so when we're taking this view, we're really increasingly pushing people away. And it also is a misrepresentation. Psychology, of course, anytime you're helping someone, there's a little bit of centering of people.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, nursing isn't anti-Christian because it's helping centering a human.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Or physical therapy for that matter.
Right.
But I think there's a true misunderstanding of what it means to be human. That's at the center of that. We're made in the image of God. We are being human is a divine enterprise, actually, because there's a spiritual component to it. No matter how much psychology you apply to a human, you can't separate out the fact that there's a spiritual component to it. And I think it actually helps some people to connect to the spiritual component. I think it helps all people, actually, but I won't use an imperative like that to say all. But I think therapy actually invites you into the spiritual world if you're willing to go there.
Yeah. And good point. And to follow up with that, the question I often get, or the concern I often get before somebody starts therapy or wants their kid to go to therapy, is they often say, I want a Christian counselor or a Christian therapist or Christian psychologist.
Right.
First, I would say you want the best psychologist,
Yes,
Christian or
yes,
not.
yes, I agree.
But the underlying concern in that is that I want somebody that is not going to oppose my faith or will challenge my faith in a negative way, or is anti-Christian or Christian thought.
Right.
I will say this is not true of all therapists, but most overwhelming majority of therapists that are worth their
cost,
salt,
the price, right, whatever,
will always be faith-affirming.
Yeah.
They may look at aspects of faith and say, that's not a healthy expression of your faith.
Yeah.
But they're going to operate within that framework and say, your faith is important to you. And often you'll have people that are nowhere close to being Christian that will contend for someone to reclaim their faith and capture their faith again. And so it's exact opposite. It's not that you have to have someone that's going to be a Christian. And the other part is sometimes the implication is it has to be a biblical counseling thing.
Oh, now you're going down a path.
And as we've talked about here,
yeah,
the whole like biblical counseling, biblical parenting, biblical
marriage,
whatever. Let's get past that.
Yeah,
because that's not.
Where are you going, Dave?
It is a thing.
Let me bail you out.
It's not a good way to think about it.
Right. I think we've taken the word biblical and applied it to things that the Bible was never intended to be applied to.
Right.
Can we learn some things about good relationships in the Bible? Absolutely. Can we learn some good principles on how to parent? If you're in the...
Don't exasperate your child.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Train a child in the way he should go.
Ish.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But then there's a lot of
because
them.
the last part of that is often.
And then he won't depart from her, or she won't. And so it's the struggle of understanding a proverb of wisdom of there's some truths in there, but there's also some things that take us down paths that we just shouldn't go down.
Yeah.
And then to name it as being biblical, which then assigns it to God, which then becomes irrefutable because God said it, so therefore we can't dispute that. Well, the reality is some guy wrote a book about it and took some passages out of the Bible and made their case for it, and we can cherry pick the Bible to say anything we want.
Yeah, for sure.
That's how cults get started.
100%.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I digress.
But you digress.
That makes me mad.
So our punchline is not everyone would agree with this, but I would say that psychology and therapy and all of that can be very compatible and congruent
with faith
and actually supportive of faith.
Yeah, for sure.
That's 100% where we're landing.
And if you've got questions about that, feel free to hit us in the notes. Thanks for joining me, Dave, on this short.